And we are live.
Hey folks, welcome back. Scott and I are back with another great topic this week. This one's a really good one because we're talking about reasons to not use a dog trainer and when it's time to call in a dog trainer. So the thing about training your dog in dog training is, most people when you think of a dog trainer, what do if you want a dog trainer? Scott, just wait, back up. Did you ever hire a dog trainer for Archie?
Yes, we did. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to have you answer the question. So I just want to, before I answer them, so what was your process when you started to look for a dog trainer? What was the first thing you did?
We thought about like what is the challenge in front of us? Like, are we able to figure it out?
Hmm.
Can we even see any sort of results? And then when we started to look for a dog trainer because we didn't get results and we're like, this is not working at
Hmm.
all.
Hmm.
We basically had to decide what type of dog trainer we're looking for.
Hmm.
There's very dominant, strict dog trainers. There's more science, positive reinforcement dog trainers. What,
Yep.
you know, there's ship the dog off and they ship the dog back. And apparently they don't have dog trainers. So that's a little scary.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
each his own. So we just figured out what do we want to have then result be.
Yeah.
How
Like
do
your
we
goals.
What are our goals? How do we want to sort of solve the situation or the challenge
Yep.
and actually work with Archie, my dog, moving forward type of thing. So do we want to have a very strict relationship? Do we want to have a
Yep.
friendly relationship where it's all kind of what fits the nature of our current relationship with Archie?
Yeah. Yeah, because there's so many different routes you can go depending on what you need. And so I wanted to talk about when to bring in a dog trainer and some of the things you guys can do by yourselves. Because ideally, what people do is like, you get a dog, you try some things by yourself, and then, either it works out or there may be a few things that are working and aren't working. But, sometimes you might try to, push through it, and other times there, you might need to call in a dog trainer, like Scott said. But there's so many different things you have to take into consideration when you think about calling a dog trainer and when to call a dog trainer. So first, I want to talk to you about the consequences of doing the training yourself. So there's nothing wrong with training your dog yourself, but the potential consequence to that is you losing time that could be used. So if it's put it this way, if it's a behavior that ideally would need a trainer's help, then it's kind of like you're losing time by doing it yourself. But of course, if you're not a trainer like myself, you wouldn't know that. You would do just like what Scott did or any other person did and just try it yourself until you realize, like, wait, I may need help. So there are some things that need to be done by a trainer, but you doing yourself from the giddy up, you can lose time. So you may want to think to yourself, if you are getting a dog, like, do I want to go ahead and jumpstart it myself and see how it works? Or do I want to get a trainer to start me off right so I won't have to go into these problem behaviors? So ideally, I love it when clients call me and say, hey, I'm getting a dog in a few weeks. What do I do? And I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. I'll come out before the dog comes. I'll come when the dog comes. So, ideally, having a trainer on board will help smooth the process along, but there are a little drawbacks to if you want to do it yourself. And then, you fumbling around, Googling, watching YouTube videos, and trying to piece stuff together when a trainer like myself could devise a plan so you guys can kind of work through that. So talking about trainers like myself, there are different types of trainers out there. There are positive reinforcement trainers, which means you use like a lot of praises and treats. There are trainers who use electric collar trainers. There's trainers who may use some sort of like punishment as a form of training. So when you look for a trainer and think about doing it yourself or looking to find a trainer, you want to think like Scott said, do you want to build a relationship with your dog? Do you want to use the e-collar training? There are ups and downs of those type of trainers, but that's a whole nother segment. We're talking about when to call a trainer. Just to get into, before I talk about when to call a trainer versus doing it yourself, I want to talk about what actually a trainer does. Yeah, there are different types of trainings, trainers that use different styles, but there's very different cases where there's different things that trainers do. So I'm just going to go through them like, so if you call in a trainer. So one thing that a trainer does is basically behavioral things. Like if your dog's barking in the house, potty training, jumping on, guests and stuff. So if you have those issues, you can call a trainer for things like that. but it's also something that you could do on your own as well. But again, if you want structure behind it and you don't want to fumble around, then you can call in a trainer. Another thing a trainer could do is obedience training. So a dog learning sits and a come command to keep them out of dangerous and tricky situations, so can come in and do some basic obedience training. And that's ideally one that most people will try to do on their own because it's pretty straightforward. It's only when it gets into the more advanced behaviors, working with your dog outside. Most people start in the house, but a lot of times I'll hear like, hey, my dog doesn't behave well outside. In that case, you may want to call in a trainer as well when the behaviors get a little more advanced and you need some structure behind it. Trainers can also help you with agility training and take the basic obedience, everything to another level. Agility is basically like a dog sport, an obstacle course for jumping and stuff. Archie did agility too, right?
Yeah, he's currently doing it. Yeah.
Exactly. And did he do basic obedience before agility?
Yeah, so he did like basic obedience, and then the trainer we were working with at the time, she had like 3 or 4 levels of obedience, and so moving into different environments and all that sort of thing. So we like doing the training parts. We just did all the different levels, and then after there wasn't really any obedience left, we moved to agility type of thing.
And that's usually how agility works, is that once obedience stops, you move on to agility. Now, did someone tell you about agility, like recommend it, or is that something you had in your mind, like I need him to do this?
No, someone recommended it, and we had heard about it a couple times, and they're like, okay, look into this. We're kind of done with obedience because we've gone through the levels, and we were just searching for something else to get them engaged with, right? Because it is mentally challenging physically and that sort of thing.
Exactly. And ideally, we'll do a whole nother live on that, but ideally things like agility, nose work, and things like that, that's beyond basic obedience. And so a lot of time folks don't know about that too, but if you work with a trainer, they can give you the recommendations like, hey, you did basic obedience, let's move to this level, like agility, nose work, or, stuff like that. Also, a trainer can help you, again, with dogs who are meant to herd, like dogs who herd things, dogs who hunt or rescue work. They can go through like vocational training, like service dog training, things like that, or emotional support or therapy dogs. So if you have a dog that wants to go on that path, trainers can help you do that as well. So those are like the 4 things that trainers can do. But now let's talk about what everyone's been waiting for. When do you call in a trainer? Okay. So of course, if you're going to get started with anything, try yourself, whether it's house training, obedience training, and things like that. But you want to call in a training, of course, like we talked about before. If you're a first-time dog owner and you never lived with a dog before, we have to teach you all about this whole new doggy lifestyle. Again, like I said, you want to get ahead of things, and so calling in a trainer if you have absolutely no clue what's going on, instead of Googling or asking a friend, calling a trainer like myself to devise a structured plan to get you off to a right start, so when your dog comes, they can get you back on a track. Also, even if you have a dog, reminders for experienced dog owners that sometimes you may need some individual help. One reminder I want to tell folks is that even though you may own the dog, sometimes it may be in between years, or you may get a second dog back to back. Every dog has their unique personality. It may require different training. A lot of times I hear it's like, oh, I owned, a dog 15 years ago. It was nothing like this. Or I had the same breed dog. I got it, 15 years ago. I thought it was going to be the same. It's not. Every dog's different, just like each person is different. And so that dog may require additional training. And you may have to do training classes and help build a bond with that new dog. But ideally, a trainer can help you with that as well. The next thing, puppies. Puppies need training. Puppies know nothing, okay? So a puppy isn't going to raise themselves. And the biggest problem people have with puppies is the house training, the biting, the nipping, and things like that. They just don't know what to do. And so get yourself off to a right track, especially with puppies, because it can be tricky. They definitely have their own personality on top of all those unwanted puppy behaviors. But if you have a trainer come in, or you can take a basic obedience class. They can definitely get your puppy off to a right start and start to curb some of those behaviors as well. The next thing I also talk about when I talk to my clients is the teenage years, the teenage horrid behaviors. Teenagers are juveniles. They start to exhibit those bad behaviors around 7 months, where sometimes they may start to be amazing, even if you do training with them. You're like, wow, they're doing great with training. They'll be great from like 4, 5, 6 months, around 7 months, they start to act out. And then from 1 to 3 years old, they turn into those horrible teenagers. And so unfortunately, not unfortunately, but during that time, that's when a lot of folks, either if they were training with me before, they will reach back out, or that's ideally a time that you want to reach out to a trainer as well, to kind of help curb some of those behaviors. They may do some barking. They start to build a little bit more confidence and start to test things out. They may start to like escape from the yard. So there's a lot of things that come along with them being a teenager. So we have a trainer come in, we can talk to you about those things, start to change some of those behaviors that are happening now, and then help you manage those behaviors that are coming soon. And I encourage those puppy owners, if you are working with a trainer like myself, one of the things I like to do with the training is, if I have a client that calls me, the puppies are 3 or 4 years old, I have a program that gets you right through those teenage years. So sometimes, ideally, instead of working with a trainer just for the puppy stage, you might want to consider working with a trainer throughout the whole process, just to get you throughout that time. So keep that in mind. Also, again, just to prevent problems, you want to call in a trainer. I tell folks you don't want to wait till it's going to happen. All about prevention. So the more that you can get them in to change behavior, you have to remember, the more dogs get to practice behavior, the harder it's going to be to change. So if you can call a trainer in ahead of time, that's going to be ideal. When you called the trainer in for Archie, was it in the beginning? Was it in the middle? Where were you?
Like when we did obedience and everything, that was in the beginning. We knew, because we knew he's going to be a healthy sized dog, we need to get things under control and sort him out. Later on, it was more just he developed reactivity. So at a certain point, because my mom was walking him at times, we knew we needed to get some advanced training done. So she took a class with him, and then we used the techniques that she learned as well for about, I think it was a 6 or 7 week course, and it's just reactivity training, how to work with them, positive reinforcement techniques and that sort of thing. And the techniques they learned in the class, we've carried on for the last few years. And so, but one of those things is where we tried to manage it, and then it just hit a certain point. We're like, okay,
yeah,
exactly. So we need to
yeah. And so that's usually what happens. You try a few things, call on the trainer, and you guys have to remember, once you start the training, it's kind of an ongoing thing. So once the trainer stops, or the classes stop, or whatever training you want to keep on going. So another time you want to call on the trainer is aggression. Aggression is pretty. That's something that's not going to go away on its own. That's a whole nother live you'll probably do. Things that won't go away that you probably need to get training for. So aggression just means that a dog, you don't want to wait till a dog bites someone. So if they're lunging at people, barking, or if they're fearful, if you have a fearful dog, or if they're afraid to meet people or strangers, that's the time you want to call in a trainer. And you may even have to call in an expert like a behaviorist that can do a little bit more, like if your dog needs some type of medication. But ideally, you can, if you're like, oh, I don't know when to call a behaviorist, don't worry about that. Call a trainer first if that's what you know, and then they can give you the recommendations as if you want to call, if you need to take it a step further with getting behaviorist. Okay. And so those are the situations where you want to call in a trainer. And also there are some like do's and don'ts with training. There's not really any don'ts. Like I said, there are like some positives to positive reinforcement training in different styles, but there are different types of training. So you can have a trainer that use positive reinforcement rewards and stuff. You can use a lure and reward system. So you can use a lure and reward system where they'll lure the dog with the treat and reward them. There's marker training where the trainer use a clicker, where that's more so letting your dog know when they're getting stuff right, but it's more for precision. Also, like I said, there's training where dogs learn by consequences. Dogs learn that way too. So there's training behind that. But ideally, you want to know which trainer is right for you. Ideally, what most people do is you get on Google, type what is the closest dog dog trainer near me, which is not a bad thing. And so you just want to make sure when you're looking for a trainer and you're trying to find a trainer, of course, you can go to Google, start looking at the reviews, talk to your local vet, talk to your friends and family, because if they work with a trainer, they give good recommendations. That's ideally a good place to start. And then once you get into, once you find the trainer you want, there's a bunch of questions you can ask them. That's a whole nother segment too, but just a few of them you can ask. So you can ask them how long they've been training. You can ask them what kind of training equipment they use, and just, talk to them more about your goals and stuff, and tell them what your needs are, and then see what they say, and they can kind of devise something for you. But with that being said, those are the times you want to call on a trainer. Those are the type of trainers you want to look for. I hope you guys have gained some valuable tips of when not to use a trainer and what you can do on your own. Scott, did you gain any valuable tips that you can do on your own?
No, it's good. Yeah. It was good. We definitely want to know, like, certain things you don't need a trainer for, but other things you want to, make sure you're getting ahead of things, right? Like especially reactivity and that sort of thing. Once you start to see it, you don't want to take that chance, right? Like if you want to run into a bad situation, if your dog takes it up the next level before you get training or your training help. And it's just like, it's one of those things we don't know what we don't know, right? So
exactly. So talk to someone who knows. Yeah,
at least to have a conversation, start the conversation and see maybe there is better training that you can get help with most times. I mean, you got to remember, dog trainers work with tons of dogs. You have a sample size of what your dog, but they have a sample size of many dogs they work with. They've sort of tested and tried things and they know what works. So you don't have to test things on your dog for a couple of years to figure out what works. You can work with the trainer and shortcut quickly, right? So I mean, that's pretty much it. But yeah, it's been really good. Yeah, really great for sure.
So if you guys have questions or things, feel free to reach out and contact me. I'm really open to answering questions. Or if you want to book with a trainer like myself and you want to speak to me about your goals and your dogs or things like that, you can reach me at downforpaws.com, Facebook, Instagram. You can hop in the direct messages and stuff and message me as well. Scott, do you have anything to piggyback off of? Or
check out our Facebook, Instagram, and any questions you have about any of this, feel free to leave in the comments and we'll get back to it as soon as we can. But otherwise, that's all we got for today. Hope everyone has a great week, and we will see you guys next week.
Same
channel, same time. So, yeah.
All
right, guys.
Bye. Enjoy.